Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Weil. This is the JupyterLab weekly call for Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. We have 7 people on the call, or sorry, 8 people on the call. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have anything you want to discuss on the record or off the record, please add it to the agenda. There should be a link in the chat. I will read the first item on the agenda, which is from Frederick, who is not able to attend today. The Google Summer of Code, or GSOC. GNOME Focus applied, and Google has accepted us, and some candidates have already reached out. There is a dedicated room on Gitter if you want to join. Looks like it's JupyterLab_GSOC 2024. I've seen a couple of things come through on like forums and issues as well. So please keep an eye out for any of the GSOC folks and be extra supportive of them. There is also a blog post coming out from GNOME Focus with project updates. This is from Frederick's update. I reached out to know the process to be listed in such an update, as it could be another communication channel. This may be an action for all the Jupyter community group to gather updates from all projects and proxy a unique update to GNOME Focus. There's also a Team Compass issue about this, Team Compass issue 244 on the JupyterLab Team Compass. So I know Frederick is not on the call, but this is on the record. Any other things people would like to add for the record? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So we do have another agenda item from Mehmet about the JupyterLab desktop release.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I have a quick update on the release. There's a new version released a couple days ago, 4.12-1. In this version, I added support for setting up the JLab CLI from UI for the macOS users. On macOS, normally we set up the CLI automatically. On Windows and Linux, this is done automatically during installation. But on Mac, we set up the CLI command at the application launch, but that sometimes fails because of the permission issues. If that is the case, users can now go to the settings dialog and then set up the CLI from there with one click. And it's going to require elevated permissions, and users just need to enter their password to allow that. And this version also bumps the bundled JupyterLab version to 4.12 as well. And yeah, that's about the new release. And I would like to do a quick demo of a new feature that I am working on, which is the UI modes in the JupyterLab desktop. Let me quickly share my screen. All right, I guess you can see my screen now.
Yep.
Now, this is still work in progress. So UI modes basically lets you switch between different UI options that are available in JupyterLab, but it's like a set of options, you can think of that way. And it's under the menu, you go to UI mode, and there are 4 UI modes available. The standard mode that JupyterLab uses is the multi-document IDE, and you are seeing it here. It has the left sidebar and left panel and right sidebar and status bar visible. And if you go to single document IDE, you will see that this will switch to simple mode. Simple mode is the single document IDE actually. And you don't see the tabs anymore, but you can still go to your tabs from this menu in here, and you still see the left and right panels in here. And the important update is the new mode is the Zen mode. If you go to Zen mode, basically you are focused to your notebook document. You don't see the status bar, left panel and the right panel at all, and you can just focus on the notebook in here. And I think a lot of users like this view. They are not too much interested in the advanced options that come with the side panels. So I think this will be liked by the users a lot. And this is also a good alternative for the people who are fans of the Notebook Classic view. And if you don't want JupyterLab Desktop to configure your layout at every launch, you can go back to the custom mode, and then it will be left to the JupyterLab through the workspace customizations or the user settings. And this can be configured from the settings dialog. You can see there are two new options now. The UI mode, this is for UI mode for the new sessions. Custom is the default settings coming from JupyterLab web application. And the new default for opening single files, that is opening notebooks by drag dropping or double clicking on the UI, is going to become Zen mode so that people can just focus on that particular notebook or the file that they are opening. And you can see this in action. For example, if I open just this single notebook in here, this will launch in Zen mode. And you can see that user can just focus on this notebook. Yeah, that's all I have for demo. Any questions?
So just to be clear, we have Zen mode, and that's different than the existing simple mode, right? Like once you're in Zen
Right.
mode, you can't change to the regular mode. Oh, you can change to regular mode using the menu in
Yes.
JupyterLab Desktop, but not in the pull downs. Okay.
You can still go and individually change the configuration there. Let's say you are in Zen mode and you want to just show the status bar. You can still do that. But
Okay.
the thing is, this is stored as part of the workspace or project. And next time you launch this project from this working directory, it will be restored to your setting in here, to the Zen mode. So the status bar will be hidden. If you
Yeah.
want to keep it this way, you can go to custom, and then custom will preserve your current setting. So next time I come here, it should just show Zen mode plus the status bar.
Okay. Is there like a
Oops,
documentation
didn't work.
update or a blog post coming out about these new UI modes? Because they're
The
useful,
bar.
and I want people to be more aware of them.
Yeah, this is still work in progress. I'll update the documentation on the repo. Plus, I plan to also release a blog post.
Nice.
Yeah, the status bar didn't show up. That seems to be a bug. I'll take a look at that.
All right. Well, great work on this. Thank
That's
you.
all. Thank you.
Is the Zen mode specific to JupyterLab Desktop, or
Yeah, it
could,
is. It is specific to desktop.
do you think it would make sense to have it maybe in lab also by default?
I think it makes a lot of sense to have it there as well, but the view options in JupyterLab are already like crowded. Maybe having another menu to switch like this easily would be good. And we need to also think about how we can persist this setting. JupyterLab Desktop has the workspace settings or project settings, so it's easier to manage that way. So we need to think about how this can be managed in JupyterLab web app. Okay, Nick has some comments.
Yeah, for the sake of the recording, I'll read out Nick's comments because I know he's had some audio issues lately. Nick's asking for naming consistent with the upstream, drop the field name and move to the page title or tab title, move custom to the top, call it default, and auto zen might seem confusing. So it might be a good idea to keep the conversation going on like a GitHub issue so that more people can
Yeah.
participate in that discussion. Seems like this is still an early
Mhm.
feature.
There's a PR up, Nick. I had tagged you there as well, but I'll put it also to the agenda. Anybody else can chime in, and we can discuss there.
All right. Any other questions about the new JupyterLab desktop? I am curious, actually. I think I opened a Team Compass issue a long time back about this, that the JupyterLab official website, jupyter.org, didn't have JupyterLab desktop as a way recommended to try it out. I'm wondering whether we should consider adding that yet. Yeah, it's still open.
Yeah, good question. That is blocked by the Windows code signing work that's in progress.
Oh,
So you might remember conversations. The non-focus has purchased a certificate, code signing certificate,
yeah.
and it is still not active yet. And I am working with them to finish up the process. And once we have the certificate, we will be able to sign the Windows installer, and
Mhm.
then we can announce this because currently the Windows, when you download the Windows installer, you will get a security warning in the browser,
Yep.
and we don't want that experience. And before we publicly announce, we want to get rid of that by
Yeah.
using the code signing. So that's the reason mainly.
Yeah, I looked on this Jupyter GitHub IO issue I dropped into the chat, and Mike mentioned this as a concern uh, over 6 months ago, but it's still a concern. It's something that I think I agree. If we want to recommend this, we don't want people's first experience with Jupyter to be a scary looking security warning that people might you know not trust. Nick is
Right.
saying we need a baseline installer that provides everything for a contributor to make their first pull request to JupyterLab, for example. Yeah, I agree. I think Eric is on the call, Eric Gentry, like the docs working group. I'm not sure if you guys are talking about the contributor documentation at all. I know that was probably, so I joined the community over 2 years ago. That was probably one of my first touch points, was the contributor docs. And I think that was my first pull request, was making revisions because there were some things that I found confusing or out of date. Now the contributor docs are good, but they're very long. They're very comprehensive, and it might be a little off-putting. I don't know, Eric, any discussion
I'm
about
afraid
that?
I've missed the beginning. I was late to the meeting here.
Well, I don't think we were talking about it at the very top, but like the contributor documentation, I think it's in light of Nick's comments just a minute ago in the chat about like how do we get
Is this,
people
you're talking about the Jupyter.org contributor docs, or?
I think it's more like the JupyterLab contributor
Yeah,
docs.
you're talking about, and there's core, remember there's core contributor and then extension developer docs. And I would say very much so that both of those are very long.
Hmm. I mean, there are a lot of different ways you can contribute. That's the worry, right? Is that there's no one size fits all set of instructions for contributions. Um, so
Right.
it's more like I've seen some interesting articles about like how to write good developer documentation. And it's like, I am a blank and I want to do blank, and trying to fit all of that together.
Yeah. I know I've had discussions with other people too about kind of calling these sorts of personas and trying to write documentation geared toward these different kinds of personas, whether you're whatever, a student or an
Yeah.
engineer or you're actually a software developer.
Yeah, I will say I'm biased because my team built Jupyter AI, but that's been our common demo case, is that we load all of the Jupyter AI documentation into Jupyter AI itself, and then we can ask augmented questions of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure whether you've tried that with the Jupyter documentation, but I know there's quite a few projects out there, frankly, most of which aren't particularly good, and many of which are
Yeah.
probably misleading or harmful. But the idea of like loading in code and documentation and being able to say like, hey, I'm on Windows, I want to create a custom theme for JupyterLab. How do I do that? And see how well it works.
Yeah, I've been into some discussions with people here about similar things. We've never, it's never gone beyond the idea stage though, for sure.
Yeah.
I just missed the beginning of the conversation. So we're talking about improving the docs in the context of what?
Well, we were, it's understandable if you're confused because we were just talking about JupyterLab Desktop. That was Mehmet's topic. And then we rapidly turned into like the contributor experience more broadly.
Yeah, that's something that's really important. I think having recently again read top to bottom the contributor docs, or rather the extension developer docs, right? Definitely some, I think a lot of the problems we've identified in the past certainly can be remedied. Like it's too long. We've talked before about structuring things via deep page hierarchies like Wikipedia, so that people can dive in and get information as they need it instead of trying to throw literally everything at them all at once in one page. As we just talked about, these kind of like personas who are different types of users who may need content in different ways. So there's many things we can do here to improve the contributor experience. And like I don't think that there is even an environment setup section in the extension developer part. We do have one in the core contributor part. But I think like you look at the holistic experience of someone who's coming into this project new, and I think it's gonna be really difficult and really challenging. And especially, it's difficult enough personally, like as I have 6 or 7 years of professional experience as a software engineer, and a lot of our users are not going to be software engineers. So like it's difficult enough for me as a professional doing this. But we really also always need to think about students or people who are, they're smart people, but they're not software engineers. So chemists, engineers, biologists, other people, or people who work in finance, or engineers in other disciplines. We need to really restructure the docs for sure to be approachable, usable, and readable by those audiences.
Yeah, I was looking at that pull request that you had mentioned, I think on the Gitter room,
Yeah.
about that had been in the works for a long time. And we have two dimensions that make our documentation that much more complicated. One is, as you described, the broad, like not everyone is a software developer by trade. We got a lot of scientists, a lot of people who are in different lines of work. And then we also have the language challenge, that we have a lot of people for whom English is a
Absolutely.
second or third language.
And
And
I
so
think,
writing for that is tough as well.
and going along with what you were just saying, I think some people in here are core developers. A lot of people in here are very knowledgeable. And I think a lot of times the people who work in the core here, and a lot of us, take for granted how they take for granted the Jupyter stack, right? Because the Jupyter stack is extremely complex. And even if you're, right, you can be a software engineer, but not necessarily a web developer, or you can be, like I said, someone who's smart, a technical person, but isn't someone who does this for a living. And there are just many opportunities to serve those other audiences better, because I think especially you see this kind of, I think there is, it is kind of taken for granted that some of these things are prior knowledge in the documentation. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities in a lot of places.
Yeah, that's very well said. Any other questions, comments about the documentation experience?
I'll say that I definitely, it wasn't as someone who like works on a flavor of JupyterLab, it was not accessible to me when I first started working, but because I had
Yeah.
a mentor who was extraordinarily familiar
Mhm.
with things and was able to point me to like the right places in the documentation to learn about what I needed to learn. Having that guide into the ecosystem, it's now extremely
Yeah.
adequate for my needs. And I'm referencing the documentation all the time and trying to point other people to the right places in documentation. But,
Mhm.
I do remember that until I knew what was out there, I
It's
wasn't
rough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough at the beginning, especially. And I just basically had I had a discussion with another colleague yesterday, actually, who pinged me in a discussion, in my company, talking about how difficult the Jupyter docs are and how difficult it is to find information, how incomplete or incomplete the docs are sometimes, etc. So yeah, big opportunities for sure to improve that.
All right. Well, I am not seeing any other topics on today's agenda. I dropped the link into the chat earlier. Are there any other topics that folks would like to discuss on the record?
I mean, I could quickly say, if someone has time, if someone can approve and merge my dual compatibility guide, that would be appreciated. I think we were talking in Gitter, right? So
Yeah, can you drop a link into this room as well? Because I know not everyone is on the
I
Gitter.
will. So
I just looked at it. I noticed it in my peripheral vision, but not everyone here is on that.
So Mike had some suggestions, which I've split off into a second PR. In discussions with him, he said he was okay with, I believe, said it was okay with splitting it off into a new PR so that this one can be merged in and we can get it in front of users, then do the additional improvements later. But yeah, this thing has been going for like 8 months. So
all right. Well, I appreciate your patience. I saw that Frederick replied to that thread, and he's not on this call, unfortunately. And Mike is also not on the call. He was the one who made some of those comments a few months ago, so might require you to follow up with them. I can take a look at that as well. I know sometimes pull requests can linger for some time. We need to be good about that.
Thank you.
Let's see. I'm not sure. I thought I saw earlier this week that there was a new JupyterLab release in the 4.0 series. Yeah, 4.0.13 came out a couple days ago. 4.1.2 came out last week. That was I know that was more than a week ago because we already have the desktop version made on that. As a brief reminder, the Lab 3 blog post is out. So there's a maintenance schedule where each major release is going to be supported until 1 year after the 0.00 release of the following major versions out. So JupyterLab 4.00 came out on May 15th of last year, which means that JupyterLab 3 is officially reaching end of maintenance May 15th of this year. Now, because that may be a bit shocking to some users, we said through the end of 2024, we will consider critical pull requests and we'll consider doing patch releases for 3x releases. But we really need to actively encourage people to upgrade if they're still using Lab 3. And I know a lot of people are still using Lab 3. So to encourage people and prioritize. If you see issues or pull requests come in that address regressions that 4 caused relative to 3, please take a look at those. We can take a look at those maybe in the off the record portion, but I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments about that. Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything else. So I can stop the recording. Does anybody else have anything they want to discuss on the record? Last call. All right, brace yourselves, everyone.